Hi, we're Team Rootkit, and we're going to be presenting our analysis of cryptocurrency security architecture for regulators like the SEC. Our presentation is going to be broken down into three parts. First is going to be crypto's biggest security weaknesses, and then a SecOps architecture to prevent fraud as well. Secondly, we're going to be looking at how the ACH system handles crypto payments. We're going to be using Kraken's Wyoming Digital Asset Bank as an example, as well as the top 3 cyber risks it creates. Third, key takeaways from our guest lectures and how it all connects.
Hello. We'll be looking at the cryptocurrency security architecture. We're basing this off the 2025 crypto crime report that we could use to implement our own architecture to prevent crypto fraud. In the 2025 crypto report, there is countless weaknesses, with AI being forefront as well as state-sponsored crime. We're no longer facing like isolated hackers. We are facing state-sponsored infiltrators and actors backed by organizations which allow for a much more longer spanning breach, which means that there will be vulnerabilities built up over time. With AI, it is allowing for breaching to be done through social engineering using deepfakes and AI trained voices of specific people. It is identity theft that allows for them to gain access to otherwise inaccessible parts. And by identifying these core weaknesses, we could move on to our security architecture, where we apply a zero trust architecture strictly mapped by NIST-aligned AI threat intelligence, SIEM, threat monitoring, and incident response. We'll be enabling multi-factor authentication to allow for a much more thorough kind of identity check. But with this, it would be basically essentially monitoring our user behavior using an AI threat intelligence. And combined with this, it'll move on to security to enable both the threat intelligence and the SIEM, kind of like Suricata, where it kind of checks for threats, and if it finds it, it'll list them out. This is kind of encapsulated in the security box with anti-phishing, which is also then applied back to the identity and how our user accesses their crypto, which would be through a zero trust policy. They cannot access any more than what they are requesting. This also allows for another key highlight of the Crypto 2025 report by Chain Analysis, which is private key mismanagement. With multi-factor authentication and a zero trust policy, this private key mismanagement would be negated much more, as it would allow for the keys to remain private and not be as mismanaged because of the zero trust policy, which allows them to access the rest of their funds, their crypto. To truly protect our users, however, we have to apply all this using a NIST-aligned command center, which is here at the bottom box, before they could ever access their funds. And using the crypto crime report of 2025, we could see that the key factors were identity, and how they access things with private key mismanagement, and AI deepfakes with social engineering being used with AI. And then state-sponsored actors, which have much more of a deeper running, better funded way to breach and have more time to dedicate to that. And this is done also by the zero trust policy, where we highlight where on the Crypto 2025 report there was North Korean IT workers that would infiltrate to add vulnerabilities. With the zero trust policy, we would be only allowing the minimum to be accessible by IT workers. As such, there would be no ways for them to access any of the fund storage it's behind a wide perimeter of security, firewalls, and AI threat intelligence monitoring, an AI contract auditor, and multi-factor authentication. If there is a breach, we would follow a incident response that is also misaligned to better recover and manage those breaches.
ACH stands for Automated Clearing House. It's basically the backbone of electric money movement in the US. Every time you get a direct deposit, paycheck, or pay a bill online straight from your bank account, that's ACH. It's managed by an organization called NACHA, and it processes over 26 billion payments a year. So how does it actually work? There are three main players. First, you have the ODFI, that's the sending bank. When you authorize a payment, your bank bundles that request into a file with your account and routing numbers and sends it to NACHA. NACHA then batches all these requests together and routes them to the RDFI, the receiving bank, which releases the fund. And this whole process settle ups to 4 times a day. And with same day ACH, it can happen even faster. On the protocol side, everything runs under NACHA's operating rules, which requires AES 256 encryption to protect your account data in transit. ACH itself is actually a subset of broader EFT, electronic funds transfer standard. Now, here's where it gets interesting for crypto. Kraken Financial, which operates as licensed bank in Wyoming, uses ACH as the on-ramp customer funds their account through ACH. And Kraken converts that USD into crypto. That's the bridge we'll see in the next slide. Slide 2, the DFD diagram. This diagram shows the full data flow of ACH crypto transactions from the start to finish. On the top half, the blue zone, you have the traditional ACH word. The customer initiates a payment. The ODFI creates the ACH file, not just routes and settles it, and funds arrive at Kraken Financial as the RDFI. And Kraken Financial is it's highlighted in amber here because it's the critical bridge. As a Wyoming special purpose depository institution, or SPDI, it's legally licensed to hold both USD and crypto. So once the ACH settlement lands and Kraken initiates the crypto transactions on the blockchain. From there, the purple zone, the blockchain network validates and confirms the transaction, and the crypto assets land in the recipient's wallet. And the key takeaway here is that ACH handles the fiat side, and blockchain handles the crypto side, and the Kraken Financials is what makes the two worlds talk to each other.
Here are some crypto cyber risks. Firstly, if you have account takeover, account takeovers can happen in many ways. For example, data breaches. An example of this is in 2021, where Robinhood had a breach where the full names of 2 million people, email addresses of 5 million people, and then even more data, around 300 users, was leaked online. Another example is keylogging and phishing emails. So for phishing emails in 2023, Coinbase had an attack where urgent text messages were sent from hackers into Coinbase employees, and one quite dumb employee actually logged in Therefore, the hackers were almost able to access Coinbase and the internal website. However, if it wasn't for two-factor authentication, they could have actually hacked. The Britannica reading also showed how regulatory bodies have flagged fraud compliance failures as key concerns in crypto. Second, we have ACH interceptions, such as malware injecting fake routing numbers into ACH batch files. So ACH transfers contain sensitive routing and account numbers that must be encrypted per NACHA. A malware can silently replace a destination routing number in a batch file from, for example, 1234 to 4231, getting money transferred to them. So SWIFT network manipulation is also something that can happen. SWIFT is different, however, in North Korea in 2016 attacked a Bangladesh bank and were able to steal $81 million by sending 35 fake transactions to themselves. So that's something that also can happen in ACH. Finally, we have social engineering. This sort of links to number one, as account takeovers sort of happen in, social engineering. So the Twitter Bitcoin hack is an example, impersonating tech support and SIM swap. I won't get into the Twitter Bitcoin hack too much, but for impersonating tech support, there was a guy named Malone Lamb who stole around 263 million by calling people and pretending to be tech support, either accessing their accounts or getting Bitcoin sent to him. For SIM swap, a guy named Michael Turpin had his phone SIM access revoked by an AT&T employee who transferred access to a hacker who used that number to bypass the security that his crypto account had and therefore send $20 million from his account to someone else's. I think last time I checked upon him, he still didn't get access to his account, but he is someone who, goes online and sort of ensures that this type of thing doesn't happen. So yeah.
So the chart behind me just shows the highlights that we found for Arcus Gore and Mark Lacer's lectures and how they relate to parts 1 and part 2. And I'm just going to talk to you about Arcus's lecture. And so just a little quick intro on Arcus and who he is. Arcus has a resume that makes the rest of us feel like we've done nothing with our lives. I mean, he founded a cybersecurity company called Polyverse, and these days he's oversees about 25,000 machine learning models at Meta. But the big idea in his talk was learning to think like an attacker, always asking what would have to break for a system to fail, because that's exactly how a real adversary thinks. With that being said, my first highlight is about how Arcus says that cybersecurity isn't something you bolt on at the end. It's a function of the system itself, just like reliability is. You handle the basics first, then build your protection around what the system's actually for, and you don't try to block every attack. You assume you'll get hit, kind of like an immune system, and you build layers so the system survives it, and the damage starts to stay small. On the chart, that's the line in the part 1, where you see it's going from design basis, from the green box to the blue box. You build it in, assume there's going to be a breach, and then you limit the blast radius, basically. My second highlight points out his work at Polyverse. And so instead of patching after an attack, the goal was to stop the very first one. He scrambled the system's code so your machine and mine end up as different as a Mac is from Windows. The exploit just doesn't run. He even let red teams plan their own bugs, and they still couldn't get in. And that's the line into part 2, ACH and crypto. Crypto payments are nearly impossible to reverse, so it's better to prevent the attack than clean it up. There's no undo button.
Alright, so I'll be covering the guest lecture from Mark Glasser, and he's the former chief of chemical security at CISA. And one thing that really stuck with me was his point that risk management isn't all about predicting the future perfectly. Instead, risk management is about making better decisions when you don't know exactly what's going to happen next. This is especially true in cryptocurrency. Nobody knows what the next scam or fraud scheme will look like. So instead of trying to predict every possible attack, organizations focus on understanding the risk and preparing for the ones that hurt the most instead. The second highlight that I got from Mark's lecture is the 4 stages of risk management, which are prevention, mitigation, acceptance, and transference. And just to touch on each one of those, prevention is stopping the problem before it happens. Mitigation is reducing damage if it does happen. Acceptance is realizing that no system is perfect and that some risk will always exist. Transference is basically saying, I'd rather somebody else share this risk with me, which is where things like cyber insurance come in. Looking at our flowchart, the better decisions under uncertainty points to part 2 because ACH and cryptocurrency create a lot of new risk. Organizations have to decide where to spend their time and money protecting themselves, and risk management helps guide those decisions. The 4 stages of risk response also feeds into part 2. When we looked at ACH crypto payment risk, we could actually see examples of all 4 stages. Strong authentication helps prevent attacks, monitoring systems help mitigate them, and some remaining risk still has to be accepted. Insurance or third-party protections can also help transfer some of the financial impact. What I like about this flowchart is that it shows security and risk management working together. Mark focuses on where those defenses matter most, and one side is building the shield and the other is deciding where to put it. My biggest takeaway from Mark's lecture is that cybersecurity isn't just a technology problem, it's also a decision-making problem. The organizations that handle risk well aren't the ones that predict everything perfectly. They're the ones that are prepared when something unexpected does happen. Thank you, and then this is our reference page and our AI prompts.